The new one.
I'll enter the new one.
Hey, welcome. It's Mark Littlewood from Business to Software, and I'm joined today by two very excellent people, Josh Seiden and Jeff Gothelf. You'll know them from the Lean UX book, but let me ask them to introduce themselves. Hi, guys.
Hello, Mark.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, Jeff. Hey, Josh. So, tell us a little bit about the Lean UX book and how that's done, because that was it was something that you did a talk on off the back of at Business Software 2012, I think. Was really well received, and people got a lot out of it. How have things gone since then?
Sure. So I'll start talking about that book and then hand off to Josh to talk about our latest project. Lean UX has been out since March of 2013, actually. So we were in business software in the fall of 2013, right after the book came out.
Yeah.
And that book was really a book for designers, by designers. Josh and I both come from an interaction design background, to really help them make sense of an increasingly agile world that required a new way to think about interaction design and product design as a whole. And so that was the premise for the book, and the goal of it was to be a really tactical set of ideas about rethinking the way that we engage with non-designers, the way that we get feedback into the design process faster, and make sure that we're actually working and designing on the right things along the way. And that book saw tremendous success and really went well beyond our expectations outside of the world of design to engineering, product management, leadership, and so forth. And we learned a lot both about the processes that we talked about in the book, but also some of the challenges of making those processes work in high growth and larger organizations, and which has led us to kind of work on a new project together, which I'll let Josh tell you about.
That's great. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, one of the I would say most prominent bits of feedback we got from people who were using the book, applying the book, was that there were things that they could control in terms of thinking about their design and product development process. And those elements that were under their control, they could adapt and make their processes more lean. But then there were things that were outside of their control, things that were the way their organization was structured, the way their leaders gave them work, or what leadership asked them to work on, that made it difficult to work in a lean. There's really a need for a managers to sort of to talk about how to work in today, where increasingly embedded in those organizations, and the process of creating business software was critical to these organizations' success. So the new book is a book aimed at managers of all areas to help them understand how to deal with this coming wave of software that is, in Mark Andreessen's words, eating the world.
Okay, fantastic. And where have you got with it? Presumably you came up with the idea, thought it would take another 6 weeks, and that's how these things work, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, we wrote it over a weekend. I'm just. I'm pleased with the progress that we've made so far this year. We've been writing for the last few months. The book, hopefully, our goal is to get it out there. It's called Sense and Respond currently, and we'll see if that changes between now and launch date. But the goal is to hopefully have it out sometime next year, middle or late next year, and it's coming out on Harvard Business Publishing, which we're very, very happy about. That is really what we believe to be our target audience, and so we're thrilled that they've chosen to work with us on that.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, and it's a great channel for getting to the kind of the people that really are going to need to make a change and make a difference to bring these kinds of things on board. Have you got any case studies lined up? Are there any things you can give us a sneak preview of?
So we are working right now to incorporate case studies into the book, and we have some fascinating ones. The book opens with the story of the Obama 2012 campaign versus the Romney campaign, and it's a fascinating study in it's not a political story, but it is a story about two different, really radically different approaches to managing technology, and I think it very nicely illustrates the difference between sort of the way we used to think about integrating technology and the way we have to think about it going forward, really deeply embedding technology and technologists into our business operations. But that said, one of the things that we're looking for, we are looking for people who have interesting stories of dealing with software in their organizations, either as we're looking for those stories either as kind of background for our research or actually to incorporate in the book as case studies. So if there are folks who are interested, who are listening, who might be interested in talking with us for our research, we would love for you to reach out. We're interested in folks who have success stories, who have stories of failure, or who have stories of sort of, mixed experience where some things are going well and some things are a struggle. So we'd really love to hear those stories.
Okay, and any particular size of company that is particularly interesting here?
So what we found is that sort of smaller digitally native companies tend to have an easier time building around, they don't have legacy process to overcome. So no great learning that they are going to be, their path is somewhat easier. We are interested in hearing those stories from digital natives, but more interesting for us at this moment, since we have a lot of digital native stories, are stories of older organizations. Not so much the size of the organization, but more the kind of organizations that are kind of moving from sort of technology as the office phone system and the office copier to technology being like core to business operations.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff going on in government. I know over in the US as well as in the UK, where they've been looking at how they make their legacy operation and all the data and all the stuff that you as a citizen have to do to interact with the government, and how do you make that more accessible? That's been very effective, and I don't know if you saw today that one of the guys that's been leading that, a guy called Mike Bracken, has just announced he's leaving, and he's going to join the cooperative group as the chief digital guy. Cooperative group are supermarkets and a bank which fell apart a few years ago, and all sorts of other financial services products. So it'd be really interesting to see. I mean, clearly he's a very marketable, very employable individual, has had a huge impact on what's been going on in the government. So for him to be moving somewhere like that, where technology really isn't as well, I mean, it's just much older. Will be fascinating.
Yeah, and I think that those. I think what we're hearing is that many of the challenges that I think we are talking about are not purely technical challenges, right? They are. They're the cultural challenges of transforming the organization. And so while there are certainly technology practices that we need to build our operations around, and we need to be aware of. The transformation work is going to take it's not necessarily a technology skill set. It's a skill set that is informed by technology practices.
The other realization too that we're hoping that, and really, as we're soliciting case studies, as we're looking for other case studies, is getting to companies that traditionally have not seen themselves as tech companies. So Josh says, right, tech is moving from the faxes and the phone systems and so forth to the core of the business. Why is that realization coming into play? How is that affecting the way they do business? How is that affecting how they hire, what they invest in, what projects they choose to undertake, and how they manage the company? Because managing realizing you're in a software business means that you're managing your company differently, and how do those changes manifest? And those are really the kinds of stories that we're looking for.
Interesting. Yeah, clearly a lot of existing traditional businesses being changed. Where do you think the kind of biggest opportunities are for businesses at the moment? Is it taking technology on board and being able to move fast enough and agile enough? I mean that in the broadest sense, to take new technology on and build it into their existing systems, or is it really starting from scratch? Who's got the advantage?
So I think the biggest advantage, the biggest motivator for actually looking into this software, I'm going to call it the software revolution, which feels like an antiquated term, but I think there's still a lot of companies that are not quite there yet. The biggest advantage is learning. It's the ability for us to learn what ability for these companies to get a much faster sense of what they should be working on, what they should be investing in, where they should be putting their people, and empowering not just the traditional decision-making layer of the organization, but everyone below that to make decisions quickly based on that learning. And so in that case, you're increasing the organizational agility and building that into the culture of the company. I think that's the biggest benefit of actually working towards this more technologically empowered organization.
Presumably, design has an increasingly important part to play in the whole process of making software work within an organisation. We're seeing a lot more organisations bringing designers into the activity from a much earlier stage.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should have had a couple of. I think there are a couple of elements to that. The first is that we certainly Sorry, I'm just hearing a lot of crackling. In 2006, when the iPhone shipped, it revealed to the world sort of what designers had been sort of yammering about for all of those years, that design is actually a differentiator. And people sort of had their minds blown by, oh, if we radically reconceived the design of a cell phone, look what we get, right? So the world was sort of given this shining example of first of all, the power and value of design. But then I think that came at the right moment, because we're sort of in this moment when the infrastructure layer of the internet is in place and is in fact a commodity. We can turn on servers on demand. We can turn on all sorts of features on demand. And so the value that is being created these days is not being created by pure technology development. Certainly there's plenty of that still going on. But there's a huge amount of value to be created by taking these technologies and combining them in ways that meet market needs, right? And that's really the sort of that's the native territory of designers in the digital age. And I think that is why we're starting to see their sort of ubiquitous presence in digital technology teams.
Presumably, I mean, what are the other kind of critical elements of getting this to a higher level within an organisation? And have you been working on this for long enough to kind of have a kind of a top three mistakes or a top three do's or do's and don'ts?
Sorry, Mark, there was a little bit of noise, crackle. I didn't quite get the question.
Sorry, I was just saying, do you have any kind of, are there a kind of a top three things you need to do and consider, or a top three things you shouldn't do when you're trying to kind of take this idea into a larger bit of the organisation?
So I can take that one if
Sure.
you like. I think that sort of at a high level, what we're seeing for teams that are trying to work in. So here's the baseline. Software has this amazing property that lets us produce it and release it to the market without a formal manufacturing process, right? So we don't copy it onto floppy disks and mail those floppies out or truck those floppies out to stores anymore. We just create a new version of it and we push it live to the server. So that's enabled a new kind of process at the heart of our organization, a process where we can push changes out continuously, right? And we've seen, continuous integration, continuous testing, continuous deployment, all of that stuff. Embracing that continuous nature means changing the way we plan, right? We no longer have the we're no longer stuck with these sort of big manufacturing-based planning cycles. We can plan in smaller increments. And in fact, we have to plan in a new way, and that plan needs to, it's the second factor, right? So the first factor is embrace that continuous change. The second factor is plan in a new way, plan out, right? So what we're seeing teams that are winning are not saying we're going to ship this feature by this date, but they are saying things like we're going to have this impact in the market by this date. And then they're going to try lots of different tactics to get there. So that's the second factor, is focus on outcomes. And then the third factor is where the book gets its title, this idea of sense and respond. And it's what Jeff was talking about earlier. Because we can work continuously, we can push a little something out into the market and see if it works, and then respond to what we've learned, right? So we can push something out and pull it back if it's not working. We can push something out and we can double down on it if it is. And so this idea of sense and respond, it lets us create a kind of a two-way conversation with the market and with our customers and our users. And that, at the end of the day, is what the tactics add up to, right? That's how we create this interesting new, really revolutionary kind of new value, is this ability to have this rapid, ongoing conversation with the people we're serving, right? So that's that third factor.
There's an interesting side effect from all of that. So if you begin to execute on all three of those things, there is a really interesting and significant challenge to actually adopting what Josh just described in the large organizations, in that it changes the position of management. Up until now, the position of management has been a very deliberate one that says, here is what we will build. Here's what we are working on. Here's when I expect it. Here's what I want it to look like. Here's how it needs to function. Go forth and execute this. And by adopting those three things that Josh just described, you're turning that on its head. And managers have to very explicitly stand up in front of their organization and say, here's our business problem. I don't know what the solution is to that business problem. I know what a good outcome looks like. A good outcome means that people are behaving in a certain way, customers are buying a certain thing, there's some kind of a shift in the marketplace that we can measure. But how we get from having this problem to achieving that outcome, I'm not the best person for that. The teams are the best people for that. And so by giving them the capability to sense and respond, and by giving them this idea of outcomes as the measure of success, the whole organization takes on this position of humility, this consciousness that says, we will figure it out together. We don't know exactly what the future holds, but we'll figure it out based on what we believe good customer behavior looks like, or positive customer impact looks like. And that is really key to this change taking hold, and very, very difficult, because it is not how managers are incentivized, and it's not how they've been taught to work. Right? They're not. They're taught to ship things on time and on budget. And here we're saying we don't know what on time or on budget actually looks like. We're just saying this is your goal, and the outcome we're looking for, and we got to figure out what the best approach is to get there.
Interesting. So who has the biggest challenge there? Is it the senior management team themselves?
Yeah, I think so. I think by far it's the leadership of the organization that has to let go, has to cede some of that power to the individual contributors, the teams, the middle managers, who are significantly closer to the information that they're sensing. So Josh talked about putting ideas into market, sensing if they're working, and then responding appropriately. The teams that put those ideas into market are the closest to those ideas, and they're the first people to find out whether it was a good idea or a bad idea. And so it's empowering them with the authority to make a decision about doubling down, pivoting, or killing an idea based on that feedback. And it's that letting go of that control that is extremely difficult for senior leadership. At least that's what we've found in a lot of the case studies that we've been working on in our experience as both practitioners and consultants.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I've seen that going on a couple of times in companies quite close to me, actually, and it's fascinating how these things are always designed with the best intentions, but it's often very hard to make them work in practice. I mean, often, as you say, it is because of, I suppose, management behaviours, but also then personalities of the people involved, and they're used to working in a different way. So how do you persuade them? How do you kind of get them on board?
You know, I think what we've, so I mean, if you go back to the beginning and you sort of say, well, all of this is coming in on the back of software, and you sort of you look at the sort of the great sort of process revolution in software of our time, it's definitely the agile movement, and the agile movement is a bottom-up movement. You know, it's a movement of I think the Agile Manifesto says, you know, we're discovering better ways to make software by doing it and helping others, right? So it were the people who were crafting code who said, look, this is the right way to work with this media, right? And so there's this very sort of bottom-up awareness of this is the right way to work with software. But by the same token, the organizations that we've seen that have been most successful are ones that have managed to blend the sort of bottom-up knowledge of how to work with software and that frontline contact with the market with the top-down approach that lets you do coordination across a large organization. So I think, you know, there's a lot of kind of revolutionary excitement you sometimes hear in the agile world about, you know, radical bottom-up management. I think that it's possible to go too far with that. That there's certainly a huge portion of what we're going to see, I think, over the next few years is about how to pull that bottom-up perspective into our efforts, right? How do you kind of mix that? How do you pull that in? But if you don't have that top-down approach that says, here's our strategy, here's our vision, here's where we're trying to go, right? Then I think you run into trouble too. And so what we've seen, I've got at least one interesting case study in the book of a very successful bottom-up organization that over the last couple of years has found ways to merge the sort of bottom-up knowledge and initiative and experimentation with a kind of a top-down strategic guidance, and watching the way those kind of that planning process bounces up and down the levels, I think is really fascinating, and I think it's a model for success.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's a little risky too, because we were working with a client earlier this year who is very, very open to this new approach of working. They're transitioning from being a traditional print company to a wholly digital company, and in that process they are adopting many of the philosophies behind Agile and Lean Startup and even lean manufacturing and so forth, and all these ideas of team empowerment and autonomy. And an interesting aspect that evolved there that we hadn't seen until then was, because they were focused on outcomes and because everyone was so empowered to bring their ideas forward and to contribute and to collaborate, nobody actually wanted to make a decision. They were concerned about stepping on each other's toes. And actually, snubbing any kind of collaboration or somebody else's empowerment, somebody else's autonomy. And so they would sit there and throw ideas at each other all day long and spin and not actually get anywhere, which was a really interesting manifestation of this philosophy. Nobody wanted to step up because they didn't want to be the person who kind of squashed the autonomy. And so to kind of reinforcing Josh's point, that the challenge here is to get that bottoms-up, collaborative, autonomous way of working with some kind of strategic vision that that makes, and a decision-making process that drives the movement forward.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I suppose you see the same kind of dynamic in open source movements, where it's great if everyone is contributing to a cause, but you do need leadership and you do need direction for the crowd to go.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean that is what we see as the role of leadership and executives, right? Is to set vision, is to set direction, and it's to make decisions. Absolutely, but it's to make informed decisions based on that continuous learning process that technology enables.
Yeah, fantastic. Can I'll just jump to Business Software Conference in Boston. We've been talking about you coming along, potentially doing a workshop with some people to share some of their case studies and share some of your ideas. Are there any particular kind of companies you'd like to see involved in that one? We were talking a little bit about this earlier on, but I mean, I guess it's just as a refresh as much as anything else for people.
Mark, I think thank you for that. I think as we were saying earlier, we're in sort of how companies pull software into the core of their operations. And so I'm really interested in talking with any company that's doing that, whether they've had success or whether they are getting beat up by competition, or companies that have struggled to adopt Agile, companies that have succeeded in adopting Agile, companies that have found a better way than Agile. So really, any company that is pulling technology into their heart of their business operations is interesting to us.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Well, look, we'll put a note out to attendees in the next few days. I think it'll be going out early next week now, but to get some support for that. So I suppose look forward to seeing you in Boston and really appreciate your time here. Sorry, we had a problem with the Q&A. For some reason, we weren't getting questions coming in via the Hangout thing, so I don't know if I've switched the wrong thing on or off, but I did have a few by email. So, guys, thank you very, very much indeed for your time. Do you have anything to leave us with here?
First of all, thanks for including us in this, Mark. And again, I think we'd make one last call for case studies. So if you're interested in being included, potentially being included in our book, please reach out. And if you'd like to learn more about the book, we have a URL simply to collect email addresses at sensingbook.com as well. So that would be really great if you're interested in learning more.
Fantastic. So that's sensingbook.com, and we'll put that up on the Hangout as well.
And if you, last thing, if you have questions and you didn't get to ask them on this Hangout, Jeff and I are on Twitter all the time. He's at jboogie, and I'm at jseiden, and we'd love to hear from you.
Brilliant. Okay, guys, thank you so much. I'll make sure that your Twitter handles are up as well. But right. You can stay on board for a minute or something, but we'll stop broadcasting now and see you next time. Take care.
All right.
Bye, Mark.
Thanks so much, Mark.